And we're coming to you live from the Build Ford Tough Studio. Boomer Esiason, Greg Giannotti. It's Boomer and Gio on the Fan. Simulcast across the country on CBS Sports Network. And wherever you are in the free Odyssey app, good Thursday morning. So what we expected was going to happen, happened. We talked about it all yesterday, how I didn't understand how there was foresight and there should have been something done about these games with the forecast coming. So they dropped the ball. There's nothing else to say about it other than the Mets now are in this situation. And a wise man once said, Boomer, it's not about what happens to you. It's how you deal with what happens to you. So you can't do anything about it now. You can't go back in time. You can't have Major League Baseball do the right thing. And we can scream and yell all day today like I did yesterday about how silly it was that they didn't plan ahead. But, all right, they're in this situation, and maybe it works out for them. And maybe there's some positives in there. Now you got to get to Milwaukee. You got to play better baseball than you did on Tuesday. And you got to get into the goddamn playoffs. That's it. You got to get in. Now, I have said before, and even if they don't get in, it's been a wildly successful season that the team didn't have a lot of expectations. But for those guys there, I know how important it is to put an exclamation point on this special year where they came back from the dead to play some playoff games. And it's still, as Aaron Boone said, it's right there in front of them. Now, this is the Mets, not the Yankees, obviously, but I'm slamming my fist down and saying it's right there in front of them. And they're just going to have to wait a couple more days to play the Brewers to get it all going again. Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
Yeah, good morning, G. So no surprises. So nobody was taking up. We all thought that this was going to happen, and it's the right thing to do, especially with this hurricane hitting Category 4 status. I saw that on my Fox Weather channel. So it's a big hurricane, and it's going to be nasty, and it's going to go right through Atlanta. So good thing that the Mets get out of there.
Yep.
Get up and get ready to play. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is, basically they have to come back to Atlanta on Monday with a doubleheader. That is going to be interesting. That is really going to be interesting. But I also think the silver lining part of this is hopefully Francisco Lindor is going to return back to normal and be able to play in these final few games. I mean, it would really be really disappointing if their best player this year does not get to play in like the last 3 or 4 series of the season. That would really be like that. That's more Met-esque than anything else.
Yep.
I mean, and that would be terrible. So hopefully he is going to be able to play coming this week in Milwaukee this weekend, and then again in the doubleheader on Monday in Atlanta, which basically for both the Atlanta Braves and the Mets, depending on what happens here, you talk about going into the playoffs, with a disadvantage. Here's the disadvantage.
Yeah, I mean, and there's no doubt that there is. But when you got to look at it at this point from a team perspective, a fan perspective, it's frustrating, and you feel like if they have to go back to Atlanta, and it seems like that's going to happen, I wouldn't imagine that you'd see the Diamondbacks, even if the Diamondbacks get eliminated during this situation in this weekend, that doesn't mean that those games still aren't going to be played. They actually still could be played on Monday for seeding purposes.
I guess what would happen, let's say the Mets sweep the Brewers, and let's say the Braves get swept by Kansas City, and I forget who the Diamondbacks play. I don't know.
They play the Padres.
But let's say they get swept. Maybe there's a chance they don't have to play the games. I don't know. I don't know.
There's probably a scenario in there that's possible.
Yeah,
right.
I don't know, but I think we're going to be sitting here come next Monday, talking about the Jets, talking about what happens tonight over at the Meadowlands. That's probably going to still be lingering one way or the other, negative or positive. And then, depending on what's going on with the Yankees, and by the way, if you are the Yankees, I mean, 2 of your pitchers have basically been wilting down the stretch here, and that's Cortez, who's probably got some sort of injury now, it looks like.
Well, yeah.
And then Marcus Stroman basically is imploding again. I think Marcus is just too small. I think like when the season gets towards the end, he breaks down and his arm, and I mean, he was throwing like his ball is not even moving, and he's had a September to forget.
Yeah, and the Cortez thing is real, and he hopes to pitch again if the Yankees go deep into the playoffs. So, that was a big blow yesterday. That was a lot of negativity that the Yankees were not expecting. So yeah, that's an issue, and the fact that you get beat down again by the Orioles, you have these opportunities to win the division, and you get that type of performance from Stroman right off the bat, where you're down early. It's just not doesn't feel like a team that's ready to make a big run in the playoffs right now.
Other than a brief relief stint in Seattle, he has been awful.
Yeah,
he has been awful. So I don't, is he even on the postseason pitching roster? At this juncture, I wouldn't pitch him again. I don't necessarily know that he has a.
They're going to have to pitch him. Going to have to.
He has been terrible.
Yeah. No, I know.
And I just, it's almost like he's a very small guy. I kind of feel like he just loses steam at the end of the season. I don't know if that's just a perception that I have over him after watching him over the last 3 or 4 years, but I just feel like for whatever reason, the velocity seems to be down and there's no movement on the ball, and he's just getting ripped.
Hard on his sleeve. That's the headline that CBS Sports Network decided to put up there on this graph. Is heart on his sleeve.
No.
Stephen Waldron, CBS. Who did the headline there? Heart on his sleeve. Oh, okay. And is Greg back there behind you in that little audience that you have behind you that cackles sometimes? In the room next door.
Is he?
Ask him what he means by heart on his sleeve.
Yeah, I mean, like, is he a Yankee fan and taking a shot at him, or what's he doing?
Or is he like saying that this guy, man, he puts all his emotion into it, and he's a Yankee fan growing up, and he's got his heart on his sleeve? Like, I'd like to know.
Or is that something that he says? Maybe that's something that Marcus says.
I stopped listening to what Marcus Stroman said about 2 years ago, so I don't know, and I don't like to.
I don't care what he said 2 years ago. I don't really give a crap about any of that. All I care about is whether or not he performs. And unfortunately for him, September has not been very good to him or the Yankees.
Yeah, no, it has.
When he's on the mound.
Yeah, this is a strange type of baseball morning here with the news yesterday that both those games are postponed. Another Yankee dud performance. The Nestor Cortez news yesterday afternoon. It's we've had a lot of days where we've come in here and say you got two teams that could make a deep run into the postseason. Right now, this morning, there's a lot of adversity for both of them. But I have I'm taking a different tact with the scheduling thing with the Mets, because there's nothing you can do about it. And you could sit there and you can complain about how Major League Baseball screwed them, and I believe that it will be a screw job in the end because they didn't have foresight. But this is the way it broke for you. And not everybody has a perfect situation or a perfect schedule or perfect travel. And the New York Mets in 2024 certainly haven't had a perfect season. I mean, they've dealt with all sorts of issues and ups and downs and negativity, and then they went on a run where they could do nothing wrong. And I don't.
I'm actually kind of happy they're out of Atlanta right now, just simply because of watching that first game. Yeah, watching the brain cramp meltdowns that they had on the field. I'm like,
I know, and I agree. Doing? But at the same time, you don't want to have that situation where you got to go, Milwaukee, Atlanta,
get them out of Atlanta right now. If that first game was just like, come on, man. You gotta know how to play. You gotta understand that you can't be missing cutoff guys. You got to be fielding grounders. You got to come up with big hits. I mean, I just felt like that game was everything that I feel like every game in Atlanta has been for the last 20 years.
Yeah, it was terrible. I mean, it was absolutely terrible, and then it got overshadowed by if they were going to play another game down there, they're not. So, I mean, we've all traveled. No one's traveled as much as you have. No one's traveled and played professional sports in this room other than you. So, and I know you have. Football's different than baseball, but I mean, is this the way that it looks potentially going to have that type of negative impact that a lot of people assume that it's going to have?
No, I don't think so. I think they get a couple days off. All right, they had a bad game down in Atlanta. It's too bad they didn't get another day to flush it out. But I wanted them out of there. I know we were talking about double headers and all this other stuff. But they had Chris Sale and Max Fried on coming up, and I would just say get out of there, forget that game, get a couple days off, and hopefully get Lindor back for this weekend against Milwaukee. and then try to recreate, whatever magic, he has brought to the team this season. That's how I feel about it. And then when you go back down and it's a doubleheader, and maybe you just have to split and you're in, and the doubleheader also may decide who's four. Who is 4, 5, or 6.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the seeding. So if one of the teams does get eliminated, it'll be up to the commissioner, Rob Manfred, to decide whether or not he wants those games played for seeding purposes. So I don't know if that's just, does he get the input from the teams on that? I mean, there's so much that can happen over the weekend.
I were the teams and we were both in, I would say to the commissioner, we're fine with it. Let's go. Because I would not want to have to play extra baseball games if I didn't have to. Doesn't matter. Like, if you want to play Milwaukee, you want to play San Diego, it doesn't matter. That's how I would feel if I were one of these teams. Yeah, of course, I'd like to play and win, but it also, if I knew that we were both in the playoffs, let's go. Let's go play the playoffs.
Yeah. No, I would agree if he does get input from the teams, and maybe he's going to feel like that's not the natural way of things, that everybody needs to play the 162. I don't know. I don't know what he's going to say, but that's also a scenario that may not pan out as well. I don't know.
My general sense say that they would play the games out for seeding. That's what I would feel like. That's still a thing, and it would have to be played out. But if they did ask the teams, why would you want to play a game on Monday if you didn't have to?
Yeah.
And you could be ready to rock and roll in the first round of the playoffs without having to play a doubleheader on Monday. Right,
exactly. Where you're using starting pitchers, you're obviously playing all your position players. The bullpen is going to be used. I mean, you can make a case that rolling and playing and doing all that stuff and continuing to play helps a team, but not a doubleheader before you got to travel and play a playoff series.
If I were Milwaukee and San Diego, and I were the two teams waiting to decide who they were playing,
you want them to play.
I'd want them to play.
Of course,
and say, wait a minute. We played 162. How come they're not playing 162? So that could be.
And we had better records than them.
By the way, that's that side of the argument.
Yeah, and a lot of this could have been avoided, but we're gonna move on from that. We are gonna move on from that part of it because there's nothing you can do. You can't go back in time, and that's what Carlos Mendoza's got to be telling these guys too. I mean, I'm sure that there's some players that are pissed off about it. I'm sure there's some players that are like, man, this is weird and strange, and the travel's weird, and a doubleheader on Monday, and then starting the playoffs. I mean, this is going to be a challenge we're not used to. But
what I'd say, hey guys, you're getting paid millions of dollars to live out your dream. Let's just live it out the way we got to live it out. There's no complaints. There's no nothing. We show up. We play baseball where they tell us. And you know what? If you think this is some sort of inconvenience, I'm sorry, but they got 2 days off. They got today.
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
Yesterday off. They got today off, and they'll pick it back up tomorrow. I'm sure that I would think that they're in Milwaukee now. I'm sure they wanted to get out of Atlanta as quick as possible. So I'm sure they left yesterday.
Yeah, whenever it came out yesterday afternoon that they weren't playing, it was more like evening, I guess, maybe 5 o'clock, something like that. I'm sure immediately they probably got word before we got word. And they were probably on that plane and gone before the big winds.
Yeah,
and
so they have a day off today in Milwaukee, and that's great. They all can go to the mall and go shopping.
Yeah. Fleegs is telling me that there were some reports that they were flying out this morning. So if that's the case,
then they got to hang out in Atlanta an extra night.
And the rain, man. The thunderstorms.
Go to Buckhead. Go hang out there.
I loved Atlanta when we were in Atlanta for the Super Bowl. I made the best out of that trip. The barbecue and the carousel and I don't remember what the hell else we did there, but it was fun. I had a good time in Atlanta.
Did you have more fun in Atlanta or Las Vegas?
Well, I had more fun in Las Vegas, of course. But, I mean, going into Atlanta.
How about Arizona?
Arizona was great. Had a lot of fun in Arizona. I wasn't playing golf at that point, I don't think, so I didn't play. And then you got the neurovirus, and that was a little strange. But, actually, I think I had more fun in Atlanta than I did in Arizona. I got to be honest with you. But you had
Gina and
right. They came out, so there was a lot
Sabrina
of a lot of kid activities I had there. Whereas Vegas was not a lot of kid activities. It was a lot of adult activities, a lot of golf activities, a lot of being up at 2 a.m. doing a radio show, watching drunken NFL players walk by the studio.
It is what it is when you're there. I mean, you just got to make the most of it. I think you really made the most of it.
Yeah, I think we all did. I truly believe we made the most of it, and we had the biggest story. of Super Bowl week that week for like 2 days with the Randy Moss thing.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, look at this. This is what was the name of this place? Steven, what was the name of that place? That's right. Wait, say it again. Bees? What was it? Yeah, Bees Crackling. Yeah, and that was, yeah, it did. It burned down, but they reopened. Did they
rebuild it? Do we know?
Yeah, they rebuilt it. Yep.
All right, good.
There's Eddie checking his insulin in the background there. It was awesome.
Nice.
Really good time. Yeah, that was, that place was, man, why is it that, like, there's certain things you just can't get the same way in certain places? Like, I know they say the water with the bagels and the pizza, but like, we can't, like, that down there, that barbecue is very hard to recreate up here in the Northeast.
Town Line Barbecue in Sagaponack on Montauk Highway.
All right, I'll check it out.
Town Line Barbecue.
Okay.
Don't you forget I told you.
All right, I'm in. I am in. All right, Boomer and Gio on the Fan and CBS Sports Network. Jerry will join us in just a couple of minutes as we just get started on this Thursday morning, the morning of Giants-Cowboys.